What's up, everyone? I'm eating breakfast at Chick-fil-A. I'm hearing there's some bad reviews of the Elden Ring DLC. I'm eating breakfast at Chick-fil-A.
Alright, let's talk the negative reviews on the Elden Ring DLC. Disclaimer, I'm someone who hasn't played the DLC yet, but I'm dying to, especially because I know who the last boss is and I really want a shot at him. But I'm a longtime FromSoft fan, by no means an expert, but I've beaten every game from Dark Souls 1 all the way through to Elden Ring. At the time of recording this, I'm seeing it on Steam at a 66%, which for a FromSoft DLC is mind-blowing to me because they always consistently get DLCs correct. I'm seeing people cite everything from performance issues to everything being too hard, but honestly, it's a FromSoft game. You should expect it to be difficult and pushing the boundaries from where the last game was. I guess the question really is did they push too far? I'm going to go over what I think is going on with the reviewers and also with FromSoft, the company. And honestly, I think the difficulty issue comes down to the difference between a game being difficult and punishing. This was a change I noticed starting in Dark Souls 3, ever so slightly, but has kind of escalated with each game since. And this is the tricky part because we come to these games for the challenge, for the feeling of accomplishment and overcoming something insurmountable. You still need to be having a good time because if the whole venture to being able to beat something insurmountable is hell, you still had to go through hell to get to it. So you have this great feeling afterwards, but you still had hours of your life that you spent getting that taint slapped around, which isn't great, but it was necessary. Or was it? But ultimately, that's why we're here. We want to be pushed. We want to feel like we got better. We want to progress. That's why we play games like Elden Ring, Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing. I think these games growing to be more punishing and less forgiving is kind of just the natural escalation, the way to make it more difficult. I wish it was different, but I think it's the way it kind of has to be. I first noticed this during the Nameless King of Dark Souls 3, but it's progressively gotten more intense. I could think of Dark Eater Midir, Ishin the Sword Saint, Millennia. Do I really feel enriched by beating these bosses? The truth is, not really. It was more relief than anything. It could just be a skill thing. I could just be reaching my ceiling, if you will. But, part of me is glad I did it, but was it worth all the time I spent learning those bosses? I don't think so. And the reason that it's so difficult, I think, is just that they're so punishing. There's so little room to learn within these fights because you'll be dead for so much of it. But I think that's really just the experience of these games and the natural progression of it. I can think of two bosses, both polar opposites, yet find their way into the top 3 of almost everyone's favorite boss tier lists. Slave Knight Gale and Ishin the Sword Saint. Think about it. You have Slave Knight Gale, one of the most forgiving bosses, yet most unforgettable, just fun fights in the entire FromSoft catalog. And Ishin the Sword Saint, one of the least forgiving fights, yet the most intense you'll ever experience, basically. Both are essentially the most universally beloved in the entire roster. Now, Elden Ring gives you a lot of ways to counteract this escalating punishment that's going on. There's so many ways to buff your defense. There's so many ways to do more damage. There's so many tools. The problem is people like me don't want to use them. And it probably is a pride thing. You don't want to resort to using summons if you've been playing the rest of the games without using summons, you don't want to start now. The comment section will laugh at you. The employees at Red Lobster will have no respect for you. We become set in our ways, and when something challenges that, it hurts. Sure, not as much as jumping on a bicycle with the seat missing. It's scary, but it always could be worse. I suspect a lot of people are just having their skill level checked, like I probably will when I start playing it. I'm going to get beat around all the time. It's going to be a learning experience. I'll try it through my usual methods, trying not to summon, trying not to use a whole lot of items or buffs or anything like that. And I may realize that I'm just not good enough yet, but I will be someday. I'll take all the advantages the game gives me because I'll tell you what, it does feel good to steamroll a boss after they've given you a hard time with better stats. See, the times are changing, so you got to evolve your strategy along with it, or you'll end up like the sheriff in No Country for Old Men, wishing back to the days where there was no summoning, where you could breeze through the whole game on your own. There wasn't no psychos like Anton Chigurh or Mesmer running around. Them's were simpler times. Ultimately, we play video games to have fun, though, and I think that's probably why people are leaving negative reviews, just because they're not having a good time. Their expectations aren't being met that they can beat it without all this help or using all the tools the game gives you to win. But I will succeed! The Meltmaster gives in to no one! Even if I do have to summon to do it. But if I did have one wish for FromSoft going forward, I'd say to give the example I often give with Malekith. It's a boss that's extremely fatal. It's like going to be a 60-second match no matter what, whether you win or die, because damage is tuned just so high. He has very little health and does tons of damage. What I think would make that fight better and just more enjoyable in general is give him more health and have him do less damage. It would make it way less of a punishing fight, and you'd have more time to figure out what he's doing in the middle of the fight. As someone who prefers the Slave Knight Gale scenario over Ishii and the Sword Saint, I just wish we could see more of those kind of fights in the future. The Slave Knight Gales, the long drawn out slugfest where you're not going to like die in 2 hits. Those are my favorite kind of fights. I mean, I'm always going to power through the FromSoft catalog because I love it, but Slave Knight Gale is like pinnacle of excellent fights. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. What was your experience like in the DLC? I'll let you guys know once I get through mine and finally get it going. Was it too hard? Was everything too aggressive? Did your game crash all the time? What did you think about the DLC? Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time.